This is a crisis of financialization, in my view. This is what I'm arguing in the new book of mine coming out again in the year. It's a crisis of financialization, and therefore it's a crisis of debt, for reasons that I will explain. Financialization is a systemic and structural change. This isn't a North American, North Atlantic crisis, it's a global crisis of financialized capitalism. Systemic and structural change with three underlying features, all of which matter for debt. The first is that there's been financialization of non-financial enterprises, exactly, commercial enterprises. The second is there's been transformation of banks. And the third is that there's been financialization of households. Now, for non-financial enterprises, what we've got is increasing distance of non-financials from banks. We don't have increasing dependence on banks, contrary to what most people think. We've got increasing distance from banks, but we've got increasing involvement in the financial system independently on a gross basis by the non-financials. They're becoming financialized in that way. They're acquiring financial capacity. The second element is that banks, as a consequence of themselves, have been transformed. And banks have turned to open market for funding, not deposits, but open market for funding. Therefore, they're accumulating debt themselves. They're borrowing themselves, and to make profit, obviously, through transactions in the open markets. The second is that banks have turned to households. If you don't do business with big business, you do business with households and other banks, basically. Households have been sucked into the formal financial system in ways that I will explain to you. But the fundamental reason is the substitution of private for public provision in housing, in health, in education, and in general consumption. And this private provision has been mediated by the financial system, by the formal financial system. The formal financial system has got no capacity historically to do that, but it's been doing it in the contemporary world. So these are the elements of financialization. Let me show you some evidence. I will be very, very quick about this. But before I do that, let me say that all these trends are basically implying the accumulation of debt in the aggregate. That's basically what happens. All these trends imply that. Therefore, the accumulation of debt is heaviest for banks and households. Increasing distance between banks and non-financials means that the debt problem is less severe for non-financial enterprises. Actually, they're awash with cash at the moment, non-financial enterprises. Okay. So, if you look at some of the evidence, I'll be very, very quick. There'll be a storm of it, but beware, stay with me. This is total financial assets as percentage of GDP. Total financial assets are, of course, debt. Some of it is debt. So you can see the accumulation of debt, and you can see that the UK there is, of course, the champion in the accumulation of debt, excluding the rest of the world. Okay? If you include the rest of the world, the UK is an even greater champion in accumulating debt, but the trends are the same. Debt is accumulating across the board. Germany, Japan, US, and the UK. There is no significant difference among them in financialization. If you now look at the breakdown of debt, and these are non-financial corporations, you will see what I mentioned to you before. This is the US, and what you will see is the declining weight of bank loans in this. They are big non-financials are not borrowing from banks in this respect. You will also see it in Japan. It's actually even more pronounced in Japan, the declining weight of bank loans, distance from banks. You will see it in Germany. German corporates are also distancing themselves from banks. Less so in the UK. The UK is a bit odd in this, and this is to do with the small and medium businesses in the last few years. But nonetheless, the trends are the same with variations. If you then move to banks, you will see some very interesting evidence. You will see what I mentioned to you before, the declining weight of deposits for acquisition of liabilities by banks in the US, and the increasing weight of borrowed funds. Banks are borrowing heavily to do their business. Okay? You will also not see it in Japan, and that's one of the differences. Okay? You will see that actually deposits are significant in Japan, hence the Japanese banking system is stronger than elsewhere. But you will see it in Germany, all right? You will see the decline of deposits as a funder for banks, and the rise of borrowed funds in Germany. And you will see it very clearly in the UK, where the recording of these things has changed, but you will see the collapse of deposits and the rise of borrowed funds. So debt is accumulating for banks as they're doing this transformation that I mentioned here. And now we'll go to households, and then the story becomes very clear. This is borrowings, liabilities by US households. And this starts in 1945 and goes all the way to 2009 because that's the best evidence. Now you see households are borrowing for mortgages. That's what they're borrowing for. Same in in the UK, similar in Germany with differences, similar in Japan. Now, peripheral Eurozone debt, not significantly different. Except there, what we get is core periphery opposition, which actually spurs financialization in the periphery and creates this accumulation of debt. I haven't got time to go through the evidence, but it's there. Let me come to what needs to be. I told you said that, right? I have to read this record. Now, we need debt reduction for banks, we need debt reduction for households, and there is no major debt problem for non-financials. That's basically in a nutshell the debt problem today, right? This is basically what's happening. Now, how do you achieve all this? Debt reduction for banks, debt reduction for households, but not so significant for non-financials. Austerity is self-evidently wrong, because austerity is to treat banks and households in the aggregate like an individual household. Clearly, the aggregate figure shows you that you've got long-term trends. And austerity actually makes the debt problem worse, as I've indicated to you, given the structural issue. So what needs doing? The options are clear and obvious. We get inflation. Inflation will undermine the debt for all involved, obviously. We can have debt forgiveness. That will also solve the debt problem, but that will create different class and social tensions because obviously the losers will not like it very much at the national level or the international level. Okay? We can have more significantly structural change of finance and structural change of provision for households, as I indicated, because the problem is a structural transformation. What banks do and how households meet their basic needs. Finally, most fundamentally, we need to restore flows of production and income. Because financialization is about the accumulation of debt for reasons that I've explained to you, but if you really want to reduce the weight of debt, what you need to improve is not so much the stock of debt, but the flow of production and income that will make the stock of debt less severe. Austerity doesn't do any of these things. It's self-evidently wrong, and we need to think creatively about which way to go out of these four options.
Thank you.